Money is tight, my mom said over the phone, her voice carrying that mix of pity and superiority she'd perfected over the years. I pressed the phone closer, nodded like I understood, but inside my stomach turned. Money is tight. Those 3 words landed like a slap, echoing louder than the hum of my fridge in the background. I didn't argue, didn't even sigh. I just let the silence hang, my fingers drumming against the table, my jaw tight. She paused like she expected me to offer something cash, help, my credit card again. Instead, I smiled to myself, a sharp little smile no one could see, and thought, let's see how tight it really is. A few nights later, while scrolling through my email, I froze. My bank alert popped up. A $10,800 purchase. Luxury Caribbean cruise. 4 tickets. Names that weren't mine. I blinked twice. The glow of the screen painting my living room blue. $10,800. Tight? My heart started pounding so hard it drowned out the television rerun in the background. I took a screenshot. Another. I locked the account. My pulse steadied. That's when I realized I wasn't shocked. I was done. But before I tell you what happened when I confronted them, let me rewind. Because you need to know, this wasn't some one-time accident. This was a pattern stitched into my life, thread by thread. They'd always leaned on me. Rent money, medical bills, emergency vacations. And me? I was the dependable one. The nurse with the steady job, the one without kids, the one who could afford it. At least that's what they told themselves every time my card swiped for them, not me. I can still hear my mom's voice from last spring. We'll pay you back as soon as we can. That money never returned. Or my dad's casual laugh after crashing my car muttering, that's what insurance is for, right? Like consequences were just background noise. So when she said money is tight this time, I almost believed it. Almost. I wanted to believe it, because deep down, I kept hoping they'd treat me like family, not a wallet. But then came that email, that glowing confirmation that shattered the illusion. $10,800, sailing away without me. I sat there staring at the screen, trying to decide what burned more, the betrayal or the fact that I wasn't even surprised. My body told the truth, my face didn't. Hot flush creeping up my neck, fists clenched until my knuckles whitened, teeth grinding so hard my jaw ached. Outwardly calm, inwardly boiling. That night, I didn't call them, I didn't text. I let them bask in their secret, let them think I was still in the dark. Instead, I replayed her words over and over in my head. Money is tight. Money is tight, like a broken record. Every repetition cut deeper, until the words weren't just insulting, they were ridiculous. And the craziest part? I wasn't even thinking about the money anymore. It was about trust, about dignity, about years of being told family helps family, when what they meant was, you help us. So I planned my move, quiet, controlled. Not a scene, not a scream, just a moment so sharp they'd never forget it. But that's another part of the story. For now, picture this. A dinner table, glasses clinking, fake laughter bouncing around the room. And me sitting there, holding the knowledge of a $10,800 cruise ticket in my pocket like a secret weapon. I hadn't spoken yet, but when I did, everything would change. If you've ever been told to stay quiet while someone used you, you'll understand why this moment mattered. And if you're new here, make sure to hit subscribe because trust me, the way this unfolded will make you question what family really means. Before that dinner table moment ever arrived, there was a long trail of smaller scenes that stacked up, one on top of another, like bricks in a wall I couldn't climb out of. You might think one lie or one stolen swipe of my credit card could be brushed off as a fluke. But it wasn't. It was a pattern, a cycle, one I let go on far too long because I kept telling myself, family is family. Take last Christmas. My sister Kayla needed money to buy gifts for her kids. She cornered me in the hallway with her practiced sigh, the one that made her look like life was happening to her instead of because of her choices. Just a few hundred, she said, so the kids won't feel left out. I tapped my card without hesitation, skipped buying myself a new winter coat, and froze walking to work the next week. She never mentioned it again, neither did I. Or the time Dad needed help covering his deductible for a blood pressure scare. He brushed it off like it wasn't serious, but he called me anyway. It's just until payday, he said. Payday never came. I covered the bill, drove him home, and 2 days later saw him buying a new grill for the backyard. My chest tightened, but I swallowed it down. That was the script. Swallow it down. And then there was the wedding. Not mine, of course. I've learned to stop expecting that kind of celebration, but Kayla's, every flower arrangement, every catered plate, every overpriced champagne flute, they all had my fingerprints on them. I didn't walk down the aisle, but my bank account sure did. When the photographer called for family-only pictures, I stood off to the side, holding someone's purse, clapping along like I belonged. That sting never left me. All of it built up, drop by drop. By the time Mom said, "Money is tight," her voice didn't just sound tired, it sounded rehearsed, like a line she'd used too many times to count. And the worst part, I could still hear the echo of all her other lines. "You understand, don't you? You're the strong one. We'll make it up to you." Those words were as familiar as my own reflection, and they meant exactly nothing. That's why the cruise tickets cut so deep. It wasn't just $10,800. It was proof, printed in black and white, that they'd never planned to include me unless my wallet came first. They were sipping cocktails on a balcony I paid for while I worked 12-hour shifts in scrubs, collapsing into bed with muscles screaming. And here's the thing. I wanted to believe them. Every single time I wanted to. I told myself maybe this time they really were struggling. Maybe this time the money was tight. Maybe this time they'd mean it when they promised to pay me back. That hope kept me trapped. Hope, more than anger, is what breaks you down. The night I discovered the cruise, I stayed awake replaying the years. The late-night texts asking for just a little help. The times they laughed about how lucky they were to have me. My dad once joked in front of relatives, "Good thing Olivia doesn't have kids. She can bankroll the rest of us." They all laughed. I smiled too, because what else was I supposed to do? Cry in front of everyone? Say out loud what I already knew. That I wasn't family. I was financing. That memory burned as I stared at the email confirmation glowing on my screen. I wasn't just angry at them. I was angry at myself for letting it get this far. For nodding every time they dangled the word family like a chain around my neck. So by the time dinner rolled around, I wasn't shocked anymore. I was ready. Ready to stop being the ATM they dressed up as a daughter. Ready to let silence turn into something sharper. Because if there's one thing I learned from years of swallowing down their excuses, it's this. Sometimes the loudest move you can make is the quietest. And sitting at that dinner table, with their laughter bouncing around the room, I held onto that thought like armor. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam my hand down. I just waited. Because I knew what they didn't. I had the receipts. Literal ones. And once I chose to speak, their game would end. The night of the dinner finally arrived. The one where everything I'd been carrying for years pressed itself into the air like smoke you couldn't breathe. We sat at a long wooden table in a restaurant my parents loved. One of those places where the menus don't even list prices because you're not supposed to ask. My dad ordered wine without looking. My sister Kayla snapped selfies with her kids. And Mom played hostess, waving at the waiter like she owned the place. I sat at the edge, quiet, the hum of conversations from other tables mixing with the clinking of silverware. To anyone watching, it looked like another family night. But for me, it was the stage I'd been waiting for. When the food came, I barely tasted it. My fork pushed risotto around the plate while my mind replayed the screenshot sitting in my phone. $10,800. A cruise cabin big enough to fit my whole apartment. Paid in full. Every laugh from across the table sounded sharper, like it was being carved into my skin. My chest felt tight, but I didn't move. I just watched. Kayla was the first to break the surface. "Olivia, you seem quiet tonight. Rough week?" Her tone was light, but I knew that look. The one that says, "Be small. Don't take up space." I smiled thinly. Just tired. Tired wasn't a lie. Tired had been my state of being for years. Then Mom leaned forward, voice soft enough for me, but loud enough for the others to hear. "You know things have been difficult lately. Money is still tight." She let the word stretch, almost like she was proud of it, like it had become a badge of honor to pretend we were barely scraping by. My stomach twisted, but my face didn't move. I nodded, sipped my water. Silence was my shield. But inside was chaos. My pulse thudded so loud I was sure the waiter could hear it when he set down the bread basket. My palms itched to slam the phone on the table, shove the proof under their noses, watch their faces crumble. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I took another sip, let the bubbles sting my throat, and reminded myself, control is more powerful than rage. Dad chuckled, raising his glass. Good thing Olivia's got no kids to feed, right? That's why she's always got our back. The table laughed. Kayla laughed. Even Mom smiled, eyes flicking toward me like she expected me to laugh too. I didn't. I pressed my fork into the risotto, the grains scattering like tiny marbles, and said nothing. Every time they laughed, the weight of that email in my pocket grew heavier. It wasn't just the cruise tickets. It was every ignored promise, every unpaid loan, every time they'd treated my effort like air. This dinner wasn't just about food. It was about theater. They played the same roles they always did. Dad, the jokester, Mom, the martyr, Kayla, the favorite, and me, the quiet one at the end of the table. But I wasn't their script anymore. I leaned back, studying them like I was seeing them for the first time. Mom's pearl earrings catching the light, Dad's watch flashing every time he lifted his glass, Kayla's manicured nails tapping her phone. They looked so polished, so comfortable, like people who'd never once worried about a bill being paid. My throat tightened. They had dressed themselves in luxury while telling me to carry the weight. The irony nearly made me laugh. Money is tight. Those words sounded like a joke now, like the setup to a cruel punchline. I thought about the patients I saw at the hospital, people who really did struggle, who scraped every penny for medication. And here was my family, clinking glasses over steak while hiding a cruise vacation behind my back. The anger simmered lower, shifting into something colder, sharper. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was focused. My silence wasn't weakness. It was the kind of silence you use to let someone dig their own grave. And they were digging deep. So I let them talk. I let them laugh. I let them imagine that I was still the same Olivia, the reliable one who would always nod and swallow it down. They didn't realize that every second they spent gloating about nothing, I was planning. They thought the game was the same as always. They didn't know the rules had already changed. Because sitting at that table, one hand resting lightly on my phone, I knew what came next. The receipts weren't just proof, they were leverage. And when I chose to lay them down, I wouldn't have to raise my voice. The silence that followed would do the work for me. The moment I had been holding back finally arrived. I remember setting my fork down with deliberate care, the sound of metal against porcelain barely noticeable under the laughter spilling around the table. My mom was in the middle of telling a story about how she managed to save on groceries, exaggerating the struggle like she was starring in her own drama. I tilted my head, pretending to listen, and then quietly unlocked my phone under the table. The blue glow lit my lap. My finger swiped, and there it was again, $10,800. 4 tickets. Luxury Caribbean cruise. Paid in full. I waited until the laughter faded. Funny thing, I said, my voice calm, too calm. The kind of calm that makes people turn their heads. Dad stopped mid-sip. Kayla set her phone down. Mom raised her eyebrows like I had interrupted her spotlight. What's funny, she asked, a tightness creeping into her smile. I looked directly at her. You keep saying money is tight. The words were simple, but they landed heavy. The table went quiet, the clatter of dishes from other diners filling the silence we left. I turned the phone over, screen up, sliding it just far enough so the numbers were visible. Then why, I asked, did I find this? The change in the air was immediate. Mom's face went pale, the practiced expression cracking for the first time all evening. Kayla leaned forward, squinting at the screen. Dad cleared his throat, muttering something that didn't sound like words. That's not what you think, Mom stammered, her hand reaching for her water glass. Her fingers shook just slightly, but I noticed. I noticed everything. Looks pretty clear to me, I said. My tone didn't rise, didn't need to. $10,800, a luxury cruise, 4 tickets, and not one of them with my name on it. Kayla gave a nervous laugh, the kind people use when they're hoping a joke will dissolve tension. Maybe it's a mistake? I shook my head. No mistake. Confirmation email, passenger list, payment cleared. And you know what? I'm not even surprised. Silence again, thicker this time. The waiter appeared to refill glasses, then hesitated, sensing the tension. He set the bottle down quickly and disappeared. I barely noticed. All my focus was on them. Mom finally found her voice. We were going to tell you, she said, too fast, words tumbling over each other. It was supposed to be a surprise, a family trip. I raised an eyebrow. A surprise? Interesting, because last I checked, family trips usually include the entire family. I let the words hang, sharp and unrelenting. Dad shifted in his seat, trying to recover his usual bravado. You don't understand, Olivia. These things... No, I cut in, steady as a blade. I understand perfectly. You say money is tight. You let me carry bills, weddings, emergencies, and then you spend more than I make in 2 months on a cruise without me. Kayla opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her eyes darted to Mom, to Dad, then back to me. She looked cornered, and for once, I didn't feel guilty about it. The table that had been filled with chatter just minutes before now felt like a courtroom. Every detail sharpened in my memory, the flickering candle, the condensation on my water glass, the faint scrape of my own heartbeat in my ears. And through it all, I stayed calm, controlled. Every word I spoke was deliberate, heavy enough to sink in without me raising my voice. Mom tried one last time. We thought you wouldn't be interested. I laughed, short and bitter. Not interested in honesty? You're right about that. I'm not interested anymore. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The silence stretched so wide, I could feel other diners glancing our way. My family sat frozen, their masks slipping, their usual confidence unraveling thread by thread. And me? I sat straighter than I had in years, my phone back in my pocket, my decision carved into the space between us. I didn't shout. I didn't storm out. I just let them see what it felt like when I stopped swallowing every lie. That dinner wasn't about food. It wasn't even about the cruise. It was about the shift, the moment they realized I wasn't their safety net anymore. And though none of them said it out loud, I saw it in their eyes, the panic of people who had finally been caught. Mom's hand trembled as she reached for her napkin, dabbing at her mouth even though she hadn't taken a bite in minutes. Dad leaned back in his chair, his jaw tight, eyes darting between me and the phone that had already disappeared back into my pocket. Kayla shifted uncomfortably, her nails tapping against the stem of her glass in a staccato rhythm. The entire table, once a performance stage for their laughter and stories, had collapsed into silence so heavy I could feel it pressing against my chest. I didn't rush. I let the quiet do the work for me. Finally, I folded my hands neatly in front of me, my voice steady. Do you know what hurts the most? I asked. No one answered, so I leaned forward, my eyes sweeping across each of them. It's not the $10,800. It's not even the cruise. It's the fact that you looked me in the eye, said money was tight, and expected me to believe it. Again. Kayla's face flushed, and she let out a weak, almost desperate laugh. Olivia, come on. It's not that serious. People exaggerate. It's just words. Just words? I repeated, my voice cool. Every bill I covered, every promise you broke, those were just words too? Do you know how many times I skipped things for myself because I thought you were drowning? I believed you. I adjusted my entire life to make sure you were okay, and you call that just words? Mom tried to cut in, her voice soft and syrupy, the tone she used when she wanted to smooth things over. We didn't mean to hurt you. We were going to tell you eventually. We just thought it would cause less stress this way. Less stress, I said flatly. For who? Because I've been carrying stress for this family like it's my second job. The waiter appeared again, hovering with a tray of desserts. The timing couldn't have been worse. He glanced at our faces, hesitated, and then asked quietly, Would you like me to come back later? Nobody answered. He set the tray down quickly and retreated, his shoes squeaking against the polished floor. Dad finally spoke, his tone sharp, defensive. You've always had a good job, Olivia. You make more than enough. We figured you wouldn't miss it. We thought... His voice trailed off when he caught the look on my face. You thought I wouldn't notice? I asked. Or you thought I wouldn't care? He didn't answer. That was when I realized something important. They weren't shocked that I found out. They were shocked that I finally said something. For years, I'd been predictable, the reliable one, the one who stayed quiet, the one who carried the weight without complaint. My silence had been their permission slip, but not anymore. Kayla leaned toward me, her voice dropping to a whisper, as if lowering the volume could lower the truth. Please don't make a scene. The kids are watching. I turned to her, my expression steady. A scene? Kayla, the scene was when you all lied to my face and toasted with wine I probably paid for. The scene is when you talk about me being dependable while planning vacations behind my back. Don't lecture me about scenes. Her mouth snapped shut, and for the first time all night, she didn't have a comeback. The longer the silence stretched, the clearer it became. They had no excuse strong enough to cover what they'd done. Every half-truth, every excuse they had used over the years collapsed under the weight of one undeniable fact this time. I had proof. I leaned back, letting out a slow breath. You know, I used to tell myself it didn't matter, that family comes first, that maybe one day you'd see how much I sacrificed. But tonight I realized something. You don't want family, you want a bank account you can hug at Christmas. Mom gasped softly, like my words had cut deeper than she expected. Dad stared at the table. Kayla kept her eyes fixed on her untouched dessert. And me? I didn't feel guilty for once. I felt lighter, because the truth was out, hanging over the table like a storm cloud they couldn't escape. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to cry. I just needed them to sit in the truth they'd created. The silence at that table stretched so long I could hear the faint hum of the restaurant's air conditioning. Mom finally put her napkin down, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Dad leaned back, shoulders stiff, as if distance could shield him from the weight of my words. Kayla stared at her plate, cheeks pink, her phone abandoned for once. And me? I felt strangely steady, like the floor under me had stopped shifting after years of wobbling. I let them sit in that quiet, because silence has a way of speaking louder than anger. Then I said, almost casually, "This is the last time." Mom blinked. "The last time for what?" I kept my gaze on her. "The last time I let you use me like this. The last time I believe money is tight while you're sipping cocktails on a balcony I paid for. The last time I swallow the lies." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Dad shifted uncomfortably, clearing his throat. "Olivia, you're overreacting. Family helps each other. That's what this is about." I leaned forward, my voice calm, but sharp enough to cut through their excuses. "Family helps each other, Dad. Not just one person carrying everyone else while they laugh behind her back. That's not family, that's exploitation dressed up as tradition." Kayla muttered, "It's not like we meant for it to be this way." Her voice trailed off, thin and uncertain. I shook my head. "But it is this way, and it's been this way for years. You just never expected me to stop playing along." The truth settled over them heavier than any accusation. I could see it in their eyes, the flicker of realization, the panic that maybe their safety net had finally been cut, and it had. I pushed my chair back slowly, the legs scraping against the polished floor. The sound turned more heads than my words ever could. I stood, smoothing the wrinkles from my shirt, slipping my phone back into my bag. My heartbeat was steady now, no longer pounding like it had been when I first saw that email. "I'm done," I said simply. "Enjoy your cruise." Mom whispered, "Olivia, wait." But I didn't. I walked out of that restaurant with my shoulders straight, leaving behind the clinking glasses, the untouched desserts, the three people who had mistaken my silence for weakness for far too long. Outside, the night air hit me cool and clean, and for the first time in years, I breathed without the weight of their expectations pressing on my lungs. The streetlights glowed, the sound of traffic rolled past, and I realized something important. Freedom doesn't always feel like fireworks. Sometimes it feels like steady air in your chest, like knowing you won't be the punchline at your own family's dinner table anymore. The lesson? Boundaries aren't cruelty, they're survival. People will drain you dry if you let them, smiling while they do it, telling you it's for love, for family, for tradition. But love without respect is just control. And family without honesty is just a performance. I thought about all the times I'd let myself believe them, the countless small moments where I gave more than I had and received nothing but silence in return. If you've ever been there, if you've ever been the reliable one who gets taken for granted, you know what it feels like, that hollow ache, that exhaustion, that quiet resentment you carry in your bones. But you also know the power of finally saying, "No more." Walking to my car, I didn't feel guilty. I felt clear. For once, I wasn't rehearsing excuses in my head, wasn't preparing to bail them out again. I was preparing for something else. A life where my worth wasn't measured by how much I could give without complaint. Maybe they'll go on their cruise and toast to each other. Maybe they'll make excuses to the relatives about why I wasn't there. Maybe they'll even convince themselves it was my fault for being too sensitive. Let them, because none of it changes the truth. The moment I slid that phone across the table, the game ended. And maybe, just maybe, they realized they didn't just lose a safety net that night, they lost me. If you enjoyed listening to this story, feel free to subscribe to the channel. If not, you can simply hit the like button so we know what you think. And don't forget, you can also share in the comments where in the world you're watching from. I'd love to know.